And it was really inspiring. A couple of days later, we went to the UN, we hand-delivered the petition, and they assured us that action was being taken. They've reminded Iran of their obligations under these international treaties. And I followed up with Louise Arbour, the High Commissioner on Human Rights, in Geneva next month. And they're constantly moving forward with this. So, as just one little individual, I didn't know where this could go. And the reason I'm telling you is just so you can understand that steps can be taken. In June 1st, the head of judiciary in Iran finally granted a stay of execution for Nazanin and ordered a retrial. So while she's not out of danger yet, at least she's not executed. Amnesty, yes. Thank you. Amnesty International says that probably by now she would have been executed. So why I'm here mostly today is to share with you that the power of the individual is so strong, and in your little own body, you've got so much that you can do. And Nazanin, she's still in prison. She's been there for a year and a half. Recently, she had 2 heart attacks because of all the pressure. She's 18. She's in a cell right now with 25 other women. Lots of them are drug addicts, screaming all the time, fighting. She says she's not at peace. But we're going to continue to fight for her. And if you want to continue to learn about her, there's a website that I've put all the information on, helpnazanin.com. I interviewed her through a third party. And in her statement, she said, even outside of these walls is a prison for me. She said, don't just help unfortunate Nazanin, help all the Nazanins of the world. She said there's mothers in these prison cells that miss their children terribly. And she's right, there's so many others. Right now as we speak a threat, imminent execution. Cobra Rahmanpour, Delare Darabi, Fatima Haqiqat Tajou, Ashraf Kalhuri. Their list continues. I want to bring attention just quickly on the case of Cobra Rahmanpour as well, because she could be executed any week now. Cobra Rahmanpour was pushed to marry a man 40 years her senior. She was 20 at the time. And he was very abusive, physically, sexually to her. His family also was very abusive to her. One day, the mother-in-law came at her with a knife. So she took the knife and stabbed the mother-in-law, and she died. So she spent the last 7 years in prison. She's very depressed. Her teeth have fallen. Her parents say she looks like a 50-year-old woman now. And she's lost all appetite for life. So there's been recent international pressure, and I think they're delaying the sentence. So we, here in this room and outside, have to keep pushing. Now, Nazanin and Cobra Rahmanpour only act as symbols for a far greater problem that exists in Iran and the Middle East, for the plight of women. Under Sharia law, there is a lot of embedded discrimination. Women are not allowed to become judges or run for presidency. They can't travel or obtain passports unless they get the permission from their husbands or their fathers. They're not allowed into sports stadiums. For the recent World Cup that happened, a lot of women wanted to go watch games, but they weren't. They weren't allowed. They disguised themselves as men, and some of them got caught. They're forced to wear the hijab, the dress, and unlike their male counterparts, they're not allowed polygamous marriages. Now, it's not only us in the West that find this despicable, not the part about the polygamous marriages, but everything else. The Iranian women from within also do. In 1935, Iran adopted the Women Emancipation Laws, giving gender equality to women. So it's been mostly only in the last 27 years since the Islamic Revolution happened that it's gone backwards, that women have been denied their rights and freedoms. But the women in Iran have not forgotten this. 65% of the students in the universities in Iran are women. They're highly educated. They want their freedoms. They fight for it. despite the dangers that they might encounter, they still go out there and protest. Just in June, hundreds of women gathered, and men as well, to fight for the rights of the women and custody issues, because men are granted custody of the children when there's a divorce. So they were protesting that, and the police came, clubbed them, threw them in jail. And this happens on an ongoing basis. So the problem is that the laws lag behind the cultural norms. And this challenge of Islamism does not only apply to women in Iran. And I'm talking mostly about Iran because I'm from Iran, and that's mostly what I know. 2 boys were recently executed in Iran because of being homosexual. The Kurd minority and the Baha'is are constantly being persecuted and killed. In fact, if you're born in Iran, you're automatically born a Muslim, so if you convert, there's severe consequences. If I ever return to Iran, I'll probably be killed because I'm not Muslim. Any type of protest against the regime is met normally with imprisonment, torture, sometimes execution. And thousands of political prisoners are in Iran as we speak. A lot of them have been thrown in jail not knowing why they're there, when they're going to be released, whether they're going to get a trial at all, whether they're going to be executed. They're not told. They're just waiting for their death. And that's a form of psychological torture right there. Our own Canadian citizen, Afshin-Jam, who's a professor, went to Iran and was kept there for months being interrogated in prison, Evin prison. And the suspicion was that he was a spy. That's why they kept him there. And the danger of keeping people in prison and interrogating like this and hearing them speak afterwards is that a lot of them are forced to give false confessions. They're tortured until when they come out, they say a story that's not even their own because they fear that, these people in power might kill their family members, their children, or might just harass them in so many ways. So it's a very difficult position to be in. And we'll never forget your own Zahra Khazemi, the photojournalist who was abused, raped, and whose body still hasn't been returned to Canada or to her son, Stefan Hashemi, here in Montreal. So what are the ways of response? It's through getting involved, speaking out, and inquiring. You should inquire to your local MPs. Ask them about what's the situation of Afshin-Jam. Demand for the RCMP to compile the facts ready to arrest Mortazavi, who you heard from Beryl at the beginning. Mortazavi, by the way, if you don't remember, was one of the leading people of what caused Zahra Khazemi's death. He was one of the murderers. And recently, when the Human Rights Council was being set up in Switzerland, the UN Human Rights Council, they were inviting representatives from all around the world. And Iran decided to send Mortazavi there. It was such a slap in the face to the international community, sending a murderer to speak on human rights at the Human Rights Council. And Stephen Harper called for his provisional arrest through tips and through... I was so shocked. I couldn't believe someone actually stood up to that. Your own professor at McGill University, Professor Payam Akhavan, he gave a lot of information to Canadian government, who ended up giving this provisional arrest. And unfortunately, Mortazavi had already left the country, so they didn't actually get to capture him. But there still needs to be enough evidence compiled so that if Mortazavi ever leaves Iran again, that they can capture him and try him under international tribunals. And so it's up to you to, get the RCMP involved and tell them this is something that we're concerned about. We want to have him arrested if he ever comes out. And even if he never comes out of the country, it still sends that message that people that commit these human rights